Now it's recording.
Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, so it looks like one of them is skilled, and then a couple others where I just threw things in are on basic. So yeah, that's good. Cool.
So where are you looking?
Yeah, so he gives you feedback. Yeah, here, let me share my screen and I'll show you where it's at. Let's see. Whoops. Too many classes open. I actually just dropped a class because it was getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, so we come up here to this assignments page. The tab at the top, and you click that. Okay, then you come to this code topics, and notice under feedback there's something to view it. So you'd click view feedback, and then you'd scroll down to see, okay, look, see, he graded that one all the way over here, and then he gives feedback at the bottom. So when you submit it, you would go into here, you would scroll down to the very bottom, you would attach just a blank file. I just do a blank Word document, but you could attach like a comic or whatever, something to make the teacher laugh.
I think I may have submitted something different this week. I did the blank file, but I think I did it in a different location.
Did you do it? You had mentioned on the Slack that you did it under professional behavioral assignment, right?
I did it under, yeah.
Or was it scheduling? Yeah, so you want code topics. This is where you submit it, not on these ones.
Dang, I think I did it the wrong place.
Yeah, you'll know because this is out of 130. These are all out of 10.
Yeah.
So.
I don't have a 10.
Okay. Does anybody else have any question? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I must have done it the wrong place. So when you submitted it, did you go under assignments and then click on that code topics? You did it?
Yeah.
So I just went right here.
Yeah, I did it the wrong place. Dang. So is there something else we're supposed to submit every week? Like an update of what we're doing, or?
Well, you have to push up to GitHub every week. This right here, this app design or whatever, pushing these up for the fluency, you could do that every other week. You don't have to do it every week. That could just be, okay, I did something this week or last week, but then I also, I wanted to finish it up, so I did this next week as well as these other two, and then you just put it all in here. You don't have to do it every week.
So really
but pushing to GitHub is where you have to do it every week. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, what do you mean by push to GitHub? What are you pushing to GitHub? Just
your code. Sorry, I need to click on my own screen so that.
Yeah, well, my code is going to that main screen we created, which has all the different sections that link to a page.
Right. But then you need to push your code to GitHub so that the teacher. I mean, he said mostly that was for the all together team assignment, but I assumed we needed to push up to GitHub every week as well.
Yeah. So basically, John, you're just updating your web pages, on GitHub, so he has those available.
Okay, well, I did mine in the wrong place then, but that's right. I'll just resubmit.
Just resubmit it. Like, it's although we're supposed to pace ourselves, there's no specific deadlines as long as you get done.
How far behind you guys are? Do you guys feel like you're behind some or not on getting your code done?
No, I'm just following my personal plan I created.
Yeah.
So week 3, I was working on the HTML5. This week, I'm working on DOM and manipulating CSS class properties using JavaScript.
Okay.
Next week, I'm going to tackle all 3 of these because they're all kind of related. Okay. Week after, I'll do these, and then so that it leaves the last 3 weeks to review and fix and
Okay.
make any of the other ones. So just kind of follow your personal plan is my
'Cause in some ways, I
suggestion.
feel like I'm falling behind. You know what I mean? I mean, I've done
Yeah.
email tags.
Yeah. I think you had a couple topics done last week, didn't you?
I
what
did
we
the functions. I did the JavaScript functions and properties one, and then I did the HTML tag one. So hopefully, that's what I turned in last week. But I guess I turned it in the wrong place.
Yeah. Well, if you do a couple more topics this week and turn them all in this week, then you should probably be on par, I think.
Okay.
I think so. It's only week 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other questions that we can go over first?
So just once a week, that's what you're turning in. You're not turning in anything else. Just this code topics and app design. Because
Yeah.
for me, I have an understanding that he's like, well, you need to do professionalism. You need to tell me what you're doing all the time and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, so I told him everything we did.
Well, I think what he means by professionalism
Yeah, you
is
can
these
post to the
discussion boards.
Yeah.
So JavaScript objects, DOM, there's all the code topics here in the discussion board. So as you're researching, you could be like, oh, this was a great spot that I found something really cool. And
You guys putting stuff in there?
because of that,
I haven't yet, but I'm
share it.
going to. Yeah.
Okay.
And then just your
I
journal.
put all my references on the end of my PowerPoint and then forget to post them.
Yeah. I've been pretty bad at that.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay. And then
Okay. Should we just get started?
Yeah, can do. And then John, just remember to update your journal, I guess, every week.
When you mean by journal, is that just that separate sheet that I'm keeping on my own stuff that we're doing every week?
Yeah, just the things that you're learning, any ideas, and Are
we going to turn that in sometime?
I don't know if we actually turned it in or we just. I can't remember what he said. I read something on it one time, but I don't think we actually turned it in.
I think it's for the final reflection that we need to use it to summarize the entire semester.
Okay,
and so it's better if you take notes each week to make sure that you know what you're doing at the end. So you're not like, oh, I don't remember what I did week 2, but ta-da.
Yeah.
My biggest problem, I guess, is the way this class is structured. Trying to learn this stuff on myself, I'm kind of struggling with that.
Yeah.
Like the Ajax and the JSON, I've been looking at it during the week like, how the crap am I going to do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
yeah.
Well, we're learning about JSON today, so.
Didn't we do Ajax and JSON last week?
We did
Ajax last
calling
week,
a JSON.
JSON this week.
Oh,
yeah, I'm doing the.
We're linked together, and I was trying to do both. Okay. I'm good. We can get started.
You're right. Okay. Yeah, I'm doing the JSON, basically parse and stringify, and I'll bring that up here. Is everyone ready?
John, you can look at the teacher. You can look at the teacher's example he did on Ajax.
I did see that. Yeah.
So. Okay. Shall we get started then?
Yeah, can do.
We'll have Jason go first.
Yeah, and this will be fairly simple. I almost kind of feel like this subject could have been tied in with something else because we're basically just looking at 2 methods within JSON, but they're important, so we'll go over them nonetheless. So for this, we talked about. So we did talk about JSON previously, didn't we, in one of our past
a little bit
presentations? A little bit. We kind of know the basic idea. You can see, in this example, they have a phone as an object in it. And in that object, there's different properties like name and specs. And you can even have an array as one of those properties. So the specs are retina display, fingerprint scanner, flash camera. Can everyone see my screen, by the way?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Yeah, it's one of the most popular methods for transporting data. Before JSON, I guess mostly XML was used, but it was a little tricky because it had to be all the data being sent from a web server was parsed into the DOM document, and it kind of made extraction, put some extra steps in there and made extraction of that data a little difficult. So when JSON came around and they introduced a couple methods to parse and stringify, it really simplified things. And now it's one of the most popular ways to transfer data is through JSON objects.
So JSON isn't a file then, right?
But it can be kept in a file, but it can be kept within JavaScript code as well.
See, because in my mind, I thought JSON was a file and we're pulling stuff out of that file.
Yeah, because probably a lot of the times it is, but yeah, it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
So yeah, and there are two different types of objects. There are JSON objects and JavaScript objects. The biggest difference is that there's quotes around the different properties within that object, whereas in the object literals, the JavaScript objects, you don't have those quotation marks there. And also JSON's a agnostic data interchange format, so you don't have to worry about using it with different languages. So yeah, the subject that I'm supposed to talk on is the actual parse and stringify methods, and we'll go in depth into those. But that's when the popularity of JSON objects really took off, is once they introduced these, really made things a lot easier for transferring of data. And this is just kind of some of the syntax for parse and stringify. So the stringify method, we can look at it, it doesn't have to be coming from a web server, but very often that's what it's used for. Here's an example of, again, some of the syntax of using stringify there. But the data has to be transferred from the web server, to whoever's using it through a string. So it can't be in the actual JSON format or JSON object when it's transferred. So in order to do that, we use stringify to create a string, and it still retains that JSON format. And then we'll see later how parse can actually change that back to a JSON object. Yeah, so it just keeps that JSON notation. And when I say it keeps that JSON notation, I'll show you an example later on where basically we're kind of keeping that same formatting. Looks basically the same, only it's a string. And I'll show an example of that later. So you can also use, this is another useful tip for using JSON stringify, is you can convert a JavaScript array to a JSON string. So it would look something like this. So that's something useful that you might use in the future. So there are some exceptions to using stringify. It can't be used with either dates or functions, as is shown in these examples here. So this is something interesting I found. It wasn't mentioned. Most of this I got off W3 schools, but they didn't actually mention this unless I had to dig deeper. I don't know, but there's actually the stringify method can take more than one argument. So if you wanted to kind of change the way your string is formatted when it's produced, you can actually add more arguments. So right here we have our our object, and we could do that just in our normal method which we showed before. Or you can actually add in different properties. So you just put them in those square brackets. And what you're doing when you add these arguments in here is you're basically telling when it's creating the string, you only want to create a string of these properties right here, so A and B. Okay, and then if you really want to get fancy, then you can also at the very end of that you can add a number, which is basically giving you the indentation. He gives another example here. You can use spaces as well, and the word for, but basically you're showing indentation before each part of the string. So just a way to kind of tailor it to the way you want to. And probably most of you won't use that. You'll probably all use this first example here, but it's just, you know, some extra help if you need it. So the parse method, this is changing our string which we've created. So right here you can see a string, and you can tell it's a string because it's within those quotation marks there. We're actually going to change that back into a JSON object, and we do that through the parse method. So basically the reverse. And this is, you know, anytime you receive something from a web server, or if you know, transferring something yourself and you want to, you know, switch it back into that object, this is the syntax for doing that. And then once it's back into that object, then you can use you can use it just like any other object. So here's an example of someone just, you know, setting this equal to the object's name property and age property. And again, there are some exceptions with dates and functions, so you can't use those. Other interesting thing that you might want to know is that the JSON parse method on a JSON derived from an array will return a JavaScript array rather than a JavaScript object. So keep that in mind. And then just really quickly, I just wanted to show you this video. You probably can't see this in here very well, can you? So let me open up the link. And, oh, okay. Maybe it'll play.
Do you want that one?
No. Okay. Huh. Well, for some reason, it's not wanting to play. It wasn't terribly important, but it was just kind of showing that it actually was creating a string and an object. I guess we'll skip that. So I'll show you my example instead here. Okay, so my example, the actual example on the web page is fairly simple, and I'll show you the code here. But let me go to inspect. Can everyone see that? Is that large enough?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. All right, so we'll go to our JavaScript here, and I'm just going to walk this through, but this is my function. That basically what's going to happen is we're going to take, we're going to store a JSON, so it's my example here, and it's just a bunch of different colors, okay? And then I'm going to use the stringify method to create the string. In fact, let me just show that here. I'll click this item here. Okay, so we'll create the string. As you can see now, it's in quotations, so it's in string form. And just like Melissa talked about, local storage, we'll be using that here. So I'm going to actually store this in local storage, and then I'm going to pull right back out of that storage. And I'm going to create a new object with that string, just like as it had been sent to us from somewhere. I'm going to parse that. And so now I have a new object, which is the same as that object that I had earlier. And now I'm going to set a new variable called new background color. This function here, I wouldn't worry too much about this. This is just kind of creating a random, it's picking a random property from that object basically. And then I'm going to assign it to new background color. And new background color is going to be white. And then this little step here is going to change the body background to this new color. And so when we go back to here, you'll see that it changes color every, when I kind of randomly, okay?
Pretty cool.
Does that make sense? I mean, does anyone have any questions about how that works at all? Pretty simple, I guess.
I think it looks good.
So are you calling your script to the script.js section?
To the script.js.
Well,
Yeah. So all my JavaScript is in this this script.js file. So when so down here, I'm on click. When I click this button here, it's calling that function 3 to change the background color.
So since you use the local storage, if you were to say close out of this browser and come back into it, will the background color still be red?
Let's see. Let's try it out. Let me save that.
That would be one way to check to see if local storage was still working. I think.
Right. Yes.
CSS would change.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the colors would still be in local storage, but it wouldn't be set.
Yeah, because
it would just go back to the normal.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, no, it just resets it back to the regular CSS.
Yeah.
So you guys doing it that way where you're using your JavaScript HTML for your HTML code, and then your script stuff's all put into the JS dot. What would you call that thing?
His script.js file?
Oh, he said you can put your scripts in its own file and call that. Is that
right?
You guys are doing it, or are you putting it all in your HTML code in the main body?
Well, I've got quite a bit of it, so I put it all in my JavaScript file. I just find it easier that way.
For mine, I had it in a JS file and then switched it to where I had just my couple methods in my HTML, which I think would be fine. Normally, they don't like you to mix like that. It's normally a good standard not to, but sometimes it's easier.
So where are you calling your JavaScript stuff in your HTML code?
Okay, let me.
When I do it in the HTML code, I have to do it just within the body somewhere. If you want to actually call a file, you would do a script tag, but you'd have a source to that script tag.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I just put up in my header, I would have a, I'm sorry, it was this one.
So I think
it's a script, you give it a type, and then you give it a source.
I think one of my biggest problems on doing this stuff is figuring out what topic to follow. You know what I mean? I mean, like in your case, you did colors.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to figure out, okay, so I got to do something in JSON. What should I do it with? You know what I mean? I think that's some of my problem. If I could find, kind of what I want to follow, then I can go work on the code trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges, I guess, is just trying to find something that can incorporate all these different topics. So yeah.
Yeah, it really comes from your research. That as you're researching and learning more about it, you see all the different kinds of examples. And that's kind of what, for me, gets my brain going and going, oh, I wonder if I could do this with it. And then kind of research that. Oh, you can do it with it. Let's see if I can add this to it and make it my own or whatever.
So going back to objects and properties, which we talked about last week, versus JSON, which is basically objects and properties, but you're taking the properties and turning them into a string, right? Is that a good way to define what we're doing here?
Yeah, exactly. So you're taking that whole object, everything within those curly braces, and you're taking the whole thing and converting it to a string.
Okay.
Yep.
Couldn't you just do that with a toString method for an object?
You probably could with like a JavaScript or objects. I guess maybe it would work with a JSON object. I don't know.
Well, I guess we probably don't have any, huh? Thinking about it.
Yeah. Let me.
They aren't really objects. It's not an object-oriented.
So here's a Stack Overflow on that exact topic.
We can't see your screen anymore. You turned it off.
Oh, sorry. We've
just been kind of sitting here twiddling our fingers.
Twiddling our thumbs.
Talking about stuff.
Okay. All right, so this person says, in both cases, I get in output the content of the object. So he's using both of those. So what's the difference? It says, unless you have a custom object with custom toString method returning JSON stringify, that object, there is no object that would give object toString equals. And toString gives. Okay, so I think basically the stringify method keeps it in that same format with the block braces on either side. Yeah. Which is ideal because
no, that makes sense.
If it wasn't in that format, then you wouldn't be able to parse it back into an object.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks for going the extra mile and looking it up for me.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, well, that's me done.
All right. I will share my screen and switch over my own screen so that the recording can see my screen. Okay, so mine was on DOM manipulation.
Right.
Why did it still show at the top there? There we go. That's why. Okay. So this is about DOM manipulation using create element, append child, insert before, remove child, etc. What is the DOM? The DOM is a W3C, which is just a worldwide web consortium all across. It's a platform and language neutral interface that allows programs and scripts to dynamically access and update the content, structure, and style of a document. So you don't necessarily have to use JavaScript with the DOM. You could use any kind of script or program with it, it looks like. So the W3C DOM standard is separated into 3 different parts. First one is the core DOM, which is the standard model for all types. Next is the XML DOM, which is the standard model for XML documents. And then you get the HTML DOM, which is standard for HTML. We're only going to be talking about HTML right now. If you want to go look at any others, feel free. So the HTML DOM is the standard for how to get, change, add, or delete HTML elements. So the DOM is a document object model. That's what it stands for. So when it's loaded, a browser creates this model for the page, which is constructed as a tree of objects like this. Okay, so you've got your document, you have your HTML, and then, I mean, you've all seen family trees before. You look at after HTML, who are the children? Well, you have a body and you have a head child. In the head child, you have a title, and inside that title, you have text. In the element, you have a couple different, you have like an H1, which has a header, you have an A, which has a link, and also has an attribute of an href. Notice this isn't a direct, just an attribute of the element. So with the JavaScript, or with an object model, JavaScript gets all the power it needs to create all this stuff and can can change all the HTML elements. So like the head and the body and the A and the header, those were all elements. It can change all the attributes like the href. It can change all the CSS styles in a page. It can remove existing HTML elements and attributes. It can add new HTML attributes and elements. It can react to all existing HTML elements in the page. And it can create new HTML elements in the page. Okay, so accessing and changing data through methods and properties. Okay, am I going too fast?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, making sure. So the HTML DOM can be accessed with JavaScript and other programming languages. Okay, so the DOM they're all defined as objects, which we've been talking about objects with JSON. We talked about it last week and the other objects. Okay, so when you do an object, you use this dot. Okay, so document dot get element by ID dot inner HTML. These are all things that you can use with that object. First one here, so you've got methods and properties. Okay, so this first one, the dot get element by ID, that is a method. It's something that you would like it to do. Okay, document, I want you to go get this element by ID, and then you give it the name of the element, the ID of the element. You say, go get this element, the entire ID demo element from that tree. Okay, and then you'd have a property. A property is a value that you can get or set. So, like the inner HTML, you can have, say, document, go get this element by this ID, and I want you to change the inner HTML of it to now say hello world. And that's what this script has done. So it's gotten this element up here, and it's added the text hello world into here. So the get element is a method, and the inner HTML is a property. Okay. The different kinds of methods you can have are get element by ID, get elements by tag name, which is you find the elements by the tag name. You can give it like a p tag or a div tag rather than giving it a specific ID. Notice though it says get elements, not element. So it will give you multiple back. And then you've got get elements by class name. The word elements, meaning it will give you back multiple. So that if you apply something, it will apply to all of them. So be careful. Okay, now the properties you can have are things like the inner HTML, which changes the inner HTML of an object or an element. You have the dot attribute, which will change the attribute value. You can also do dot set attribute, which is just another way to change the attribute value. Rather than having an equal sign, it just puts a comma. And then, just as Jason talked about, there's the element dot style dot property, which will change the style of an element. Everyone with me?
Yeah.
Okay, making sure. I don't want to go too fast. Okay. So now, using the DOM to change the CSS, I wanted to go in and talk about that a little bit more. So the HTML DOM allows JavaScript to change the style of HTML elements. Okay, so say we did this. This would change the style of this property to a new style. So as an example, we can say, okay, document, go get this element by ID, this P2 up here. And I want you to change the style, specifically the color property, to blue. And it would change that whole P tag color to blue. You can also change the style through an event handler. Say you wanted to have it click a button, like we saw Jason do. Then you would give it something else that you would have a button, and you would give it an on-click handler. Okay, so what you're saying is, okay, button, when I click this, I want you to run this thing, which tells the document to go get this element by ID, ID1, change the style, specifically the color property, to red when it's clicked. So when you click the button, it will therefore change this header color to red. Okay, Then you have adding and deleting elements. So when you add an element, you have a couple different options. You can use the create, well, I mean adding and deleting, but you can use the create element, which will create a brand new HTML element, one that wasn't in the HTML file before. You can remove a child from the HTML document or from one that you've created by itself. You can append a child to an element. You can replace a child, and you can write text directly through an output stream. Okay, and then there's also the event handler, which we just talked about. I moved things around, so I ended up putting it in front of it on accident. Some examples of these are like creating an element button. But if you do this, all you're going to get is that. It doesn't have any text in it, it's just this blank button. If you want to put text in it, you need to create what's called a text node. And then append that text node to your button. Okay, so now you'll get this. So you would create this button first, then create the text you want inside the button, and append the text to the button, that to the body, in order for it to actually show up on your web page. Get a little more fancy, you can do the insert before, which is where you create a new element. Okay, so we're going to create a new li for this ul over here. You're going to get your text node. You're going to add like water to this list. You're going to append that text node to your li so that you've got the li with the text. Then you're going to go find the element list, and you're going to insert this new item before the first node. So these are all represented as nodes. And you would just say, okay, do it before this 0 or this first node, which would look like, here's the before, here's the after. You would therefore have water be the very first one. If you don't specify this last category, it'll put it at the very end. Which is funny because it's called insert before, but I guess it just inserts before the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it puts it at the very end. So it's an optional case, but most of the time if you're inserting before, you want it before something. Otherwise, you would just append it. Anyway. You can also find an object through collections. Okay, so you would have this, so instead of document.getElementById, you're going to say document.forms. Okay, so I'm going to go look at all the forms and find the ID that is form 1, which was down here. And then it goes through and it grabs all the elements and prints out their values one by one into this demo. I didn't post what that would look like, but basically it would just grab form, first name, input, input, input. It would just do all of the form, everything that's in form, along with the break tags, everything. And I think it even does attributes. Could be wrong, but it went and did a lot. You can find out more about these kinds of collections. There's anchors, body, document element, forms, head, images, all sorts of things. You can find out more down at this link. I can post this on the Slack in case anyone wants to go through it. So now I'll ask if there's any questions, and then we'll go through my code. For my example.
Sounded good to me.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Well,
I'm good. Let's look at it.
Okay, so if you have any questions while we're looking at it, let me know. Okay, so for this DOM, what I did was I created this list. Okay, this is me and my husband in this table. Okay, and you can add to this table. Say I wanted to add my son's name to this list. You would click add, and it would add someone to this list. And then I could say get rid of my husband for right now, get rid of myself, and only say put my children in. And it would do that. I've also made it so that if I try and add without a last name, it won't let me do anything. Or without a first name. That way I don't get blank values. But this is kind of what it does. Looking at the code, let me know if everyone can see this okay. It's kind of a weird background. Okay. Okay, so basically what I do is I create this table. Okay. And on this table, I've got this new input row. Okay. Where I've got an ID for first name, for last name, and then I've got my add button, which takes me down to this first function, add row. I go and I get the first name and the last name by ID. I should have probably put the value in here, but I forgot. So I check the value down here over and over and over again. But I first check if they're not blank. If they are, I was thinking of just, not letting them do it or displaying like a alert, but I think I'll just make it so they don't do it. Leaving it blank. Otherwise, it creates a new row, because when you're doing a table, you need to have a new TD or TR. Then for each of these, we need to create a new cell, a new text to go inside there. So this first name.value. Then you append that text child to the new cell, and then append that new cell to the new row. Okay, so now in this new row, it would show this first TD if we were to print it out now. You do the same thing for the last name. Whoops. Last name. And then down here, I was going to add an edit button, and I took it out for right now. But you make this new third cell, and I added an image in there, which is this X over here. And inside that X, because it's an image, I needed to set the source attribute. I needed to set the on-click attribute, and I needed to set an alt attribute. And I decided to just do the .set attribute rather than the, because it seemed easier. And then I append this image to this cell, and then the cell to the row. So now I've got 3 in there. Then I looked for the table body element, which I added an ID to. I tried to do the get elements by tag name, but because it was a possible that it would give me back 2, it was having issues. So I just did it by ID for this one. I can get rid of my console log. And then created the new input row, which is where I add, the inputs. And I wanted to insert before this new input row, I wanted to insert the new row before the input row. So whenever I add one, it inserts it before this last one, just at the end of the list. And then I set the fields back to blank. Otherwise, they would still have what I typed in. To delete one, this was interesting. To delete it, I needed to pass in the icon, which, if you look here, when I create the element, so delete a row, I put the keyword this in there. What that does is it just says, okay, pass this element into this. So this was an icon. And I just wanted to find the parent, meaning get all the way back up to the row. So I did parent nodes up to the row. And then I wanted the row parent node, which was the TD or the T body. And I removed this row. And then it was gone from the document tree. So, I mean, it's not super crazy code, but it's pretty powerful in what it can do. Yeah, because if I were to say reset this, it goes back to my original HTML. It doesn't add anything to the actual HTML file. It just does it all in the browser through the DOM tree.
Very good.
So, Yeah. I'm hoping to try and add an edit onto here as well so that I can change these back into inputs. So I can change them and then have a save option.
Oh, wow.
That'll turn it back into text.
That'll get you
That'd be
skilled.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for. That it'll get me skilled.
Yeah.
Doing it all through the DOM. So anyway.
Great. Nice. Thank you. All right.
So
Okay.
I think I'm making this a little more complicated than it should be for me. I've been trying to write my code kind of in the GitHub section. Should I be using the NetBeans to be doing all this stuff in it?
Wait, you're writing the code in the GitHub section? What do you mean?
I mean, I just go and I do my stuff and then I copy and paste it into the GitHub section that links to the where my code is, like for DOM or for JSON or for. I mean, it looks like I'm doing it totally wrong.
I'm not entirely sure I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you can edit it in GitHub, but I think it'd be a lot easier if you're using something like NetBeans.
I'm editing all that junk in GitHub.
Yeah, I would. Do you have NetBeans by chance?
I
or yeah, because you have a lot more tools. You're able to test your code a lot easier, I think.
I think a lot of my problem.
Yeah, I bet you'd find it a lot easier, and then you can always drag and drop those into GitHub, or you can push and pull, and if you're using Git, it's a lot easier.
Because I noticed when you had your stuff up, Melissa, it showed all the different sections, like the CS styles and all the different pieces in your GitHub section. I've been doing a little bit different.
I'm sorry, in what?
Well, see how you have your source files, Melissa's CIT 261, and then you got.
Right, I just created a project, just one file, main thing. Then I put everything underneath that, and that's what comes up here. So if I were to go back to my topics, everything just shows up in here. It's all one big project. And then I keep all of those to where if I were to go to my Git to push them up, my Git bash to push them up to GitHub, I just go find where my project is, which is where I've already got my GitHub repository, and I just push everything that's in that folder.
Okay.
That's changed. Makes it super simple. You can even use NetBeans if I remember correctly. I mean, notice how it shows green on here?
Yeah.
Lets me know that that's been added. So I can actually come here to Git inside NetBeans and say, oh, I want to add this, I want to commit it. And then you would come down to remote, and then I want to push or pull.
So tell me if I did this wrong. I created the GitHub IO page, like you have right there. Welcome, Melissa. And then I created sub folders underneath there that I put each piece links to into a sub page. Is that wrong?
You don't have to have them all in their own folder. I mean, right now I have a media folder that holds all my media, but all my pages are just straight out.
Gosh dang it. Okay, I see how you're doing it.
But you can do it to where they're all in different folders. Make it easier for code. So, okay, everything's under here, everything's under here. But you don't have to.
Like that local storage one that your cursor right down below. That I actually have in a different folder on my Git.io section.
So you just have another folder like media that you have local storage under?
Yeah, and then I have one for JSON, I have one for Ajax, I have one for all the different areas.
And that's fine. You don't have to have them all separate like this. You can keep them all in folders.
Okay.
but you'd also don't have to have them in folders if it will make it easier for you.
Yeah. Okay, I see what's going on. Man, it's been a long time since I've done any of this stuff. Okay.
No worries. That's why we have this class.
Mm-hmm.
Else have any other last questions?
No, I don't think so. Very good job.
No, you guys did great.
It'll be weird having a break next week. Teaching 2 weeks in a row.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'll have a break.
Yep. Enjoy.
I don't know what I'm going to do with myself.
Uh-huh. Okay.
It'll be good, though.
Yeah. Very good. Well, I guess we'll just meet up next week then, right?
Yep, sounds good. 6 o'clock.
Okay,
All right.
thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Thanks for showing up, and thanks for all your work. Appreciate it.